Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Education meeting of November 15th, 2011. We have been in closed session since 6 o'clock this evening for the purposes of collective negotiations, potential or actual litigation, and the approval of minutes from October 25th and 11/1 closed sessions. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would note that there are 6 board members present this evening. Mr. McDonough is unable to be with us tonight. The first item on our agenda is student recognition. And to get us started on the recognition of our College Board National Advanced Placement Scholars, I would like to call on York High School counselors Ryan Waltz and Lisa Julian.
Okay, we're live. Okay, well, the students at York High School have an incredible opportunity to take numerous advanced placement courses. And we as staff are encouraging it on a daily basis. Whether it's an AP art class or an AP computer science class, the chances to earn college credit and opportunity for college readiness is at their fingertips. In the past 5 years, the number of advanced placement students and tests given have almost doubled. Our students are attending some of the most highly selective colleges and universities in the country. Our AP students are leaving York High School with anywhere from 3 to 50 college credit hours. College Board recognizes several AP Scholar Awards, such as the AP Scholar with Honors, AP Scholar with Distinction, State AP Scholar, and the highest award, National AP Scholar. And here's Lisa Julian to talk about our National AP Scholars.
We are very proud of our 4 National AP Scholars, and I just wanted to give a little bit of background on each of them before you get to be introduced to some of their parents tonight. Dan Falkenberg, son of Thomas and Christine, older brother to Kevin and Ryan, whom are at Bryan. Patrick, a sophomore at York, and younger brother to York graduate Thomas Falkenberg. While at York, Dan was involved in our freshman mentoring program, and according to his counselor, one of the best mentors she had. Not only was he academically talented, but also involved with the football team. We look forward to hearing more of his accomplishments at Notre Dame University. Eric Nearson, son of John and Gretchen, older brother to Max, a current freshman at York, was not only a gifted scholar during his time at York, but he also was involved with student council and the freshman mentoring program, and even developed his own landscaping business while in high school. Eric also is a Chick Evans Caddy Scholarship recipient from Northwestern University, covering tuition, room, and board, which is a very sought-after award for many caddies across the nation. Cheryl Skoukis, daughter of Paul and Susan Skoukis, younger sister to Doug, and Janet, former York graduate, not only earned over 45 college credits entering the University of Illinois in the College of Engineering in Urbana-Champaign, but she set herself apart from all others as a dedicated student and swimmer during her time at York. And after just talking with her parents, she reported that she earned 100% on her first calculus exam while at the University of Illinois. Andrew Way, son of Henry and Pamela Way, younger brother to David, a former graduate of York, was a distinguished student taking an extremely rigorous curriculum, earning almost all A's in each of his classes while at York. He was also one of our elite runners for the cross-country team, and I'm not sure how he had the time, but also quite involved with our band program. He was named an Illinois Music Education Association All-District Bass Clarinet and All-State Bass Clarinet. I'm sure he continues to make District 205 proud with his involvements at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign's campus. And this is some interesting information, all of our students combined brought over 150 credit hours with them to college because of their involvement with advanced placement tests. If you calculate it out, that is a lot of money saved by their parents.
Actually, I did calculate some of that out, and it really is a lot of money. I would really like to welcome the parents tonight. We're actually pleased and not pleased that the students can't be here. We know they are where they should be, off at school. But we do have Christine Falkenberg with us. We have Pamela and Susan Skukas, and we have Pamela and Henry Way. And we really appreciate your taking time out of your busy schedules to come here this evening. As has been said, we are here to honor these 4 students for their accomplishments, and they really represent a much larger group at York who's also hardworking. Just a couple of the figures that were in the program that I wanted to point out to you. Almost 500 students took AP exams in 2011. 69 of them got a score of 3 or higher, and 3 is what you have to get to be even considered for college credit. They had to get 3 or higher on 3 tests in order to reach this first level of distinction. Another 38 of them did even better and got to the next level, and 37 of them got to the next level, and now we have 4 here tonight who are at the highest level, which is the National Scholar. It's an amazing group of students. Dan Falkenberg earned a 5, top score, on 6 out of the 10 exams that he took, and he got a 4 on all the others. Eric Niersen earned a 5 on 3 out of the 8 exams and got a 4 on all the others. Cheryl Stukas earned a 5 on 3 out of the 8 exams she took, again getting a 4 on all the others. And Andrew Way earned a 5 on all 9 exams that he took. There's one in every crowd. And as you know, these students all ended up at very prestigious institutions. We are very proud of them. We are also wanting to congratulate all the parents for all of their nurturing support that they have provided over the years in order for these students to do so well. We are really proud of them. Last night York hosted a parent forum talking about college readiness, where we had a couple of different sessions, one in the morning and one in the evening, to talk about how we as a high school can do better preparing our kids for college. And I expect you parents were home watching football, because apparently we did a good job, and so did you. You have to be very proud of your students, and we really appreciate sharing in that pride tonight with you. So I will read a proclamation that each of your students will get. It says, whereas the College Board Advanced Placement Program recognizes high school students who have demonstrated college-level achievement through advanced placement courses and exams, and whereas nearly 1.9 million students worldwide took AP exams last spring, and only about 18% of them performed sufficiently to complete 3 or more exams, earning scores of 3 or higher, with the York Community High School classes of 2011 and 2012 producing a total of 144 AP scholars at all 4 levels, which translates to college credit at more than 3,800 colleges and universities worldwide, including more than 90% of 4-year institutions in the United States. And whereas recognition was awarded to a select few in the National Advanced Placement Scholar category, which is granted to students who receive an average score of at least 4 out of 5 on all AP exams taken, and scores of 4 or higher on 8 or more of these exams. You have to have a little math background in order to really even follow this. That's not in the proclamation. Whereas York graduates Daniel Falkenberg, Eric Niersen, Cheryl Skukas, and Andrew Way earned this prestigious distinction, with Dan Falkenberg taking 10 AP exams, earning a top score of 5 on 6 of them, Eric taking 8 tests, earning a top score of 5 on 3 of them, Cheryl taking 8 tests, earning a top score of 5 on 3 of them, and Andrew Way taking 9 tests, earning a top score of 5 on all 9 of them. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205 express congratulations to these class of 2011 and 12 graduates for this outstanding academic accomplishment. If I could have parents up here right now, I will give you the copies of this proclamation and a copy of our program.
Congratulations. Congratulate them for us. That's great. Remember the course conversations?
Principal Diana Smith. Should I have her? Principal Smith, while they're shaking hands, do you want to come and get the proclamation for the school? The next item on our agenda is related. We have with us tonight Mr. John White from the College Board, and he is here to present us with yet another award. Mr. White.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. My name is John White. I'm the K-12 education manager here in the Midwest for the College Board. And it's sort of been a well-established fact that access to higher education is critical to our nation's economic future. If we're going to achieve half of what we did in the last century and the next century, we must have the opportunity for our students to succeed in college. That is our goal. The College Board is a nonprofit, membership-based organization that is designed to do one thing: connect students with college admission and college success. If we look at the national picture, if we said this room had 100 ninth grade students in it right now, across the nation, 69 of those will graduate from high school. 42 will actually enter college. 28 will come back for their sophomore year. And 20 will earn a bachelor's degree within 6 years of graduating high school. So the national numbers now say about 20% of the ninth grade class of 2011, that cohort of students will actually graduate with a degree from an accredited university within 6 years. And I wanted to share startling statistics because it's really obvious from everything we've heard today that Elmhurst is doing something about that. I'm really pleased to see the college readiness is obviously a high priority here in Elmhurst and has earned the distinction of being placed on the College Board's AP District Honor Roll for the second year in a row. Inclusion on this list is based on the four following criteria. We did a thorough examination of 3 years of advanced placement data from 2009 through to the class of 2011. We wanted to see an increase in participation and access to advanced placement by at least 6%. We wanted to see a steady or increasing percentage of exams taken by African Americans, Hispanic Latino, or American Indian and Alaskan Native students. And we wanted to see performance levels that maintained or improved when comparing the percentage of students in 2001 scoring a 3 or higher to those in 2009. Or has the school already attained a performance level in which more than 70% of the AP students are scoring 3 or higher. So basically what we're looking at is we want more students, and we want the scores to keep going up. Elmhurst increased the number of students participating in advanced placement from 365 students to 496 students, while improving the percentage of students earning AP exam scores of 3 or higher from 85% in 2009 to 88% in 2011. Internationally recognized for academic excellence, the AP program provides students with the opportunity to pursue college-level studies and earn college credit while still in high school. More than 4,000 colleges and universities worldwide receive AP exam scores every year, and the majority accept qualifying scores for college credit, course placement, or both. But most importantly, taking AP courses demonstrates to college admissions officers that students have had exposure to rigorous college-level curriculum, which is a key element of college readiness. This is an exceptional award because only 367 other school districts across the nation have managed to earn this distinction. Of them, only 12 are in Illinois. Elmhurst is one of those 12. This award is a reflection of your leadership and hard work of your administration, counselors, teachers, and support staff, not only to identify, but to encourage and place students and mentor students so they are academically prepared for the demands of higher education. Together, you have successfully used the Advanced Placement Program to give students confidence within themselves and teach them the academic and behavioral skills necessary to remain in college. The College Board holds this district up as a model to be emulated, for it is this type of commitment to college readiness which will ensure the future success for our young people as well as the future success of our nation. With that being said, at this time on behalf of the College Board, I would like to present this district with the second annual AP District Honor Roll Award for significant gains in advanced placement access and student performance.
Principal Smith. Thank you, Mr. White, for coming, and that was very interesting background on the whole program. We are very proud of the program here. We're proud of the attention that we've been able to give it over the last few years, thanks to the help of our counselors and the entire staff at York High School. And we're also proud of the fact that the very rigor that we extend to that program, we are extending to all levels of academics in our district, and in the hopes that students of all kinds of gifts will be nurtured and be able to succeed. But thank you again for coming this evening. I'm told there's a third item of recognition this evening. Mr. Pernod.
Yes, there is a third item, and I'm pleased to announce, if board members or the public did not know, that today, November 15th, has been designated, Mr. Bloom, please, has been designated as School Board Member Day in the state of Illinois. And Elmhurst District 205 is joining other districts across the state to say thank you to these critical community volunteers for your commitment and contribution to public education and public schools in our state. Let me just, for the public, just to put this in perspective, what these 7 people are responsible for. They are responsible and have oversight for an annual budget of $109 million plus. They're responsible for 8,000 students from early childhood through grade 12. Nearly 1,000 employees are under their oversight, and 15 buildings, 15 facilities in this district that sit on approximately 125 acres. And as we all know, the reputation of a public school system within a community is critical to the success of that community. And it's the board members who come forward who are willing to serve the community that I believe make a difference in making really outstanding school districts. You need to say, especially I need to recognize this Board of Education in particular, because they have committed not only to the usual board meetings, but they have committed to many more hours of service as a volunteer. And let me emphasize that. They do not get paid. And I'm saying that and underlining it because I still receive phone calls every once in a while about how much we pay board members. They don't get anything. There is no pay to this. And yet this Board of Education has taken it upon themselves to increase the number of hours they are putting in this voluntary position. We have moved to board subcommittees. Those board subcommittees meet monthly, and they have all committed to many more meetings a month in order to move this district forward, to make sure that they're knowledgeable, that they are seeing the kind of oversight that is critical to create an exceptional school system. They have also volunteered to be school liaison people, and so they have each taken on 2 schools and have visited those schools, have met with the administration, met with staff, and have become familiar with the 2 schools that they have adopted. That's an additional commitment on top of all the others. So I really think that especially the Elmhurst School Board really deserves the recognition from the public, from the community, for the kind of unheralded job that they do on a daily basis. But I can't say enough. Board of Educations are critical, and I think we have an exceptional board to move this district forward. So but on behalf of the community, on behalf of the administrative team and staff, we want to thank you for your service and look forward to continuing to work with you as we move forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pernod, for your kind words. I can only say that our job is made all the more rewarding and enjoyable because we're working with people like you and your staff and the teachers and everyone in the District 205 family. So thank you. Appreciate it. The next item on our agenda is public comments. Any of the parents who came to hear their students honored are welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting, but if you have other things to do this evening, why, we will certainly understand. No one has indicated an interest in addressing the board this evening, so we will go on to the superintendent's communication, which first item is the preliminary tax levy presentation.
Yes,
Mr. Pernod.
I'm going to turn this over to Chris Welton, and Chris is going to be presenting for the Board of Education a preliminary tax levy presentation for this evening.
Thank you. We have the 2011 tax levy for you this evening. So the tax levy requirements for the school district. This is the property taxes for the school district in our current budget represent 84% of our revenues. We need to determine the tentative or the estimated tax levy no less than 20 days prior to the adoption of the levy. The certificate of tax levies must be filed with the counties before the last Tuesday in December, this year, December 27th. The truth in taxation law it comes into play if the aggregate levy is more than 105% of the prior year tax extension. This year, that is not applicable since our tax levy is 4.73% higher than the prior year. However, we are going to comply with the rules from the Truth in Taxation law, which means we're going to give public notice not more than 14 days nor less than 7 days before the hearing. So that notice will be put out December 2nd, and we will have the public hearing on December 13th. This first item is I want to make sure we understand the timeline with the property taxes. And this first slide is in regards to last year's tax levy, which last year's tax levy was all the way back to January 2010 with the CPI of 2.7. That comes out every January, mid-January, but it's the prior January to the next levy that is applicable. So the 2.75 came out January 10th. Last year in October, we did the tentative levy, and then November was approved final. December, we filed the levies. And then in March is when the county comes out with the final tax extensions and rates. And in DuPage County, at that time, you can reallocate within your limiting tax rate at that time to adjust your levies in each fund. So that happens in March. Then in the June 1st is when we get the first half of the taxes. And so last year's levy we received in June of 2011, and it was in last fiscal year. Then in September, we got the second half, which is in the current fiscal year. So then this is the current tax levy timeline, where in January 2011, is when the CPI was set at 1.5%. So this levy, we are using a CPI of 1.5%, We're going to approve the tentative levy tonight, and then in December we'll do the final levy. Before December 27th, I will file the levy with the counties. In March, we will get the final EAV and extensions. June, we will get the first half, and that will be in the current fiscal year. And then in the fall, we'll get the second half, which will be in next fiscal year and next budget year. I just want to quickly review last year's tax levy, where we levied 5.66% more than the prior year extension, and that was on a 2.7 CPI. But what actually came in was in the cap funds was 3.51, so it was 2.15 less than what was actually levied. What happens is you don't know at the time of the levy what the new growth or the new EAV at the time of the levy, so you levy additional funds to make sure that you capture all of the new growth. Last year we had a 2.7 CPI, we got 3.51, the difference being 0.81% was related to the 19.2 million in new growth. So, determining the 2011 tax levy. Tax cap limits are 5% or CPI, the lesser of the two, but it's always been CPI since tax cap was put in. It's never been 5%. The highest has been 4.1, and it averages 2.4%. New growth or new construction is exempted from the tax cap. So, as I said, the current CPI 1.5. In addition, we need to levy for the 2011 new growth, which is unknown at this time. We have to use an estimate. And the EAV is unknown. We will estimate that also. Oops, I went too fast. New growth. This is the, when it comes to doing a tax levy, the most critical piece of the tax levy is trying to estimate new growth. As you can see here, the new growth has been decreasing for the past 4 years. It was 80.7 million in 2007, down to 40 million, 23 million, 19 million last year. So when I've been talking to the York Township assessor, I actually met at their office with a few other school business officials. This year they're having a lot of trouble at the township assessor getting estimates to school districts because it was a general reassessment year, plus the declining EAV has also resulted in lots of appeals and has really put them in a so they're way behind normal. They're historically behind at the assessor's office. But she did talk about new growth in general for York Township is minimal, with the exception of Elmhurst Hospital. The Elmhurst Hospital campus is really the biggest new growth that happened in York Township this year. The assessor said that the buildings in the new Elmhurst Hospital campus will be included in our 2011 new growth, and she estimated it at 38 million of EAV for new growth in 2011. There will be some additional new growth next year related to the hospital campus. So in determining the levy, we used an estimate for new growth of 38 million for the hospital plus an additional 10 million for the remaining new growth in the district. So an estimate of $48 million. As far as the EAV, based on my conversations with the York Township assessor, we're estimating that to decrease 8%. In addition to that, we levied for an additional 1% for the unknown factor, the possibility of underestimating the new growth. So our levy for this year, we have a 4.7% increase in the capped funds. Now, with the estimated $48 million, with the 8% decline in EAV, we're projecting it to be more like 3.7%, about $86 million in the capped funds, and plus the bond and interest fund at $8.945 million. So we're we're projecting that our actual 2011 extension will be $94,945,000, or a 3.78% overall increase. But our levy, as it stands, is a 4.73% overall increase. We'll open it up to questions.
Ms. Hirsch. Thank you, Chris. I just want to make sure I have, we levy more than we expect to collect so that we can ensure that we are capturing all new growth. We've done this as a board for years and years to make sure that we benefit from the new growth. I want to make sure, first off, the 3.78% that you expected our levy to come in at,
Yes.
that does include the hospital piece?
It
Or
does.
it does
That
not?
includes $48 million.
That
of
includes
new
48
growth.
million of new growth, so
Yes.
38 million of hospital
That's correct.
growth. Can you just comment on what your confidence level is that we will, that the hospital will be required to pay property taxes on those parcels? Because it has been customary that Elmhurst Hospital has not paid.
Right.
And the other question, which I didn't give you ahead of time, which I was thinking of as I was sitting here, is that there are a number of campuses actually within our school boundaries. The old hospital site, the Center for Health, where we've been, that was built, I don't know how many years ago, but been taking my kids there for a pediatrician, appointment. So were those added to the tax rolls? Or, there's a lot of ambiguity here, and I'm not real confident how this is going to play out. So any advice or insight that you have would be greatly appreciated.
Well, when I met with the township assessor, they specifically said that they will be putting the hospital on the tax rolls as new growth this year. We do expect them to apply for tax exempt status. 3 hospitals have been denied tax exemptions this year, or it might have been last year, or recent times. And the Illinois Constitution states that exemptions can be granted when property is used exclusively for charitable purposes. And that is the big issue related to hospitals receiving tax exempt status. But the assessor specifically said that and recommended that we levy for it because they are putting it on the tax rolls. Whether at some point down the line they achieve tax exempt status, that could happen, and we are concerned about that possibility. At that point, if that happened, we would have to refund the money, and I'm estimating with the $38 million in EAV that to be about $1.4 million in property taxes. And so we are concerned about that. When the assessor told me that we had new growth from the hospital of $38 million, my response was, Oh, and he was like, normally business officials are excited. But this is a strange situation, it being a hospital and whether they are going to achieve tax exempt status or not. But it's coming on our tax rolls this year as new growth, so we need to levy for it.
Would it be your recommendation that we set aside or somehow mark these funds as uncertain? I would love to have the 1.4 million to be able to invest in our kids' education, but given the uncertainty of the challenges that these hospitals are making and the resources that they have to bring to bear, this is a new challenge, if you will, that hospitals are being challenged for their charitable, not tax exempt status. So, my gut reaction is this is money that we should not count. We'll obviously have to levy, but not count on using.
Yes, I do. I agree with you. We should definitely reserve these funds for the potential liability where we could possibly have to pay the money back.
Any other questions? This is an item on our consent agenda later, so, Mr. Collins.
Regarding the hospital, I mean, you're levying at a substantially higher rate than you normally would in order to capture any new growth due to the hospital. Is that correct? Without the hospital new growth, you would have levied at a lower rate because that new growth opportunity would not be there.
Yeah. Actually, I got a call late this afternoon from the York Township assessor. They gave me an estimate at 52 million. So my 48 million estimate was real close.
Okay.
But without the hospital, the new growth would only be 14 million. So yes, if it weren't for the hospital, we'd only have 14 million in new growth. So my levy above CPI, so any amounts above CPI is related to new growth, would be less.
Okay. And please correct me if I'm wrong here, that it's my understanding that there are many hospitals up for review by, and excuse me for forgetting the name of the Illinois Commission that actually does those reviews of the property tax exempt status of hospitals. But of all of those reviewed, only 3 have been overturned and have been put back on the property tax rolls of the state of Illinois. Is that correct?
It was a Supreme Court ruling. The decision related to the hospitals followed the wake. It was in the wake of an Illinois Supreme Court ruling last year that the state Revenue Department was correct in withdrawing. So it's a change that's been happening recently.
Right.
But yes, there's not a whole lot of hospitals. I agree with you that it's.
I mean, my point is that the likelihood of Elmhurst Hospital actually and their related properties actually entering the tax base of Unit District 205 is very, very small.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mrs. Ebner, did you have a question?
I just have a quick question. So this will go to Elmhurst Press for a press release December 2nd for the tax levy. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. And is that press release set? I know we have a copy of it. Can we talk about how the levy, what you're levying, will actually end up being less in reality to make that number maybe look a little more palatable? Like, it's 4.7 could come down a little bit farther.
I think the school code requires it to be a specific form.
It's a certain form. Okay, that's what I was asking.
Yes.
Okay, so you can't really explain.
No.
Okay.
Can you Can you highlight the portion attributable to EAV versus the portion attributable to new growth in that? And then within the press release, we could actually point to the growth rate. Don't you have to break it out?
This is just a notice in the newspaper. It's not really like a press release. It's just a form.
So then can we put something in?
We could put something out.
Maybe that might just raise some questions. I don't know how we want to handle that. We can talk about that.
Yeah, we will do that. We will do that.
We have talked about that, so we were just, the public hearing is, we're doing it, we're not even required because we're under but we want to do that anyway for the position of transparency and make sure we're notifying the public. But we will certainly put out the press release from our district office to explain what this levy means and how it's being created and what the issues are. And I think we do need to emphasize this time about the Elmhurst Hospital, because this is an unusual event, and I think people are not going to understand and think that we have the potential of getting $1.2 million, and in actuality, we think it's a small percentage, and we need to be fiscally responsible for, if we do collect that funding, to put it aside, because we think the potential is we're going to have to pay that back sometime in the future, until it clears all the court cases, which could be a while.
Mrs. Stufen.
I have several questions, and I'll follow. This one is first. The 3 hospitals that got exempt status, are they new, just like Elmhurst Hospital? I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out is why would it be changed in Elmhurst? Is it because we have the new hospital?
It's new, yes.
So the other 3 hospitals were new hospitals in those communities? They weren't, okay.
If I can jump in for just a second. They didn't get tax exempt status. They lost their tax exempt status. And the reason they lost it was because this board was looking at the percentage of charitable work that they were doing in the community. And one of those was Edward Hospital in Naperville, which I find pretty shocking. And that hospital and that community is standing up to fight against this non-tax exempt status. But it was based on the percentage of charity work as determined by this Illinois board that each hospital was involved in. So that was the basis of saying, if you're not doing more than 1 or 2% charitable work in your community, you're not a not-for-profit.
So,
go ahead, Mrs.
Okay, so
Stufen.
my second question, and I think it's my last, is I just want to think about, the tax levy is what we're projecting that we need to run this district. With the expenses going up, revenue being flat, federal and state mandates that we keep getting with where we typically get little to no money, and getting less and less federal and now significantly less state funding. A big example is transportation. I mean, that's why that's why you are putting this tax levy recommendation toward us, right?
Right. The school district is facing very flat revenue stream, which I know you were at my presentation where I showed the different revenue streams. But interest income just a few years ago was over $1 million revenue stream for the school district is now $66,000, and the state revenues are falling off. We were just talking about the corporate personal property replacement taxes as part of our replacement taxes are now going to go towards paying the regional superintendent. There's lots of uncertainty, and our revenues are very flat, and our expenditures with the additional needs for our students, the expenditures are outpacing revenues. So levying this amount is within the tax cap formula. We levy as much as we're allowed to under the tax cap formula, with CPI averaging 2.4% and our expenditures exceeding that, just with a lot of uncertainty and different variables with enrollment and the different types of student needs that we have in the district. That it's fiscally responsible to levy to collect the CPI plus the new growth in the district.
And then the last point being is that, and this is a very conservative number, because given the previous conversation, if we don't get that new revenue growth with the hospital, it's going to be even tighter.
Right.
Mr. Collins, did you have a comment? Okay. Mr. Bloom, did you want to say anything? One thing that you should know is that regardless of what we levy, we're only going to get what the county gives us when these figures are in. The actual figure of the EAV, the actual figure of the new growth. We get what they give us, and the only reason we levy a little bit more than we think we're going to get is so that we don't lose out on what is coming to us, basically. Is that a fair
That's
way
correct.
to put it?
Yes.
Any other questions on the extended or the preliminary tax levy? Let's move on then to, thank you, Mr. Walton. I appreciate that. The slides are great to have in our packet. Next item on our agenda is the overview of the summer school report for 2011 and the recommendations for summer school 2012. Mr. Pruneau.
Yes, Dr. Charles Johns will be presenting the overview of this summer school and the recommendations for 2012. So, Dr. Johns.
Thank you. District 205 had another successful summer school program. Generally, we had very positive results. This was the second year that we implemented some changes that were made 2 years ago, in which we changed the kind of the format and the operations of our summer school, in which we would have 2 programs which were actually provided by outside providers on a tuition-based basis for our students and students in really this area of the suburbs. There's still areas for improvements. We could benefit certainly from better weather, and that's going to be part of our planning process for next year. We lost 2 days of summer school, and it's really hard to figure out solutions for that. And we were able to mitigate most of our losses in terms of time, student time in class, but it's something we want to proactively plan for bad weather this year, and we think we've got some solutions in the offing. The breadth of the program is particularly noteworthy as we provided necessary coursework and enrichment coursework for students of all ages. We've maintained, by having such a rich array of programs, we're able to keep kids on focus either athletically or academically throughout the school year. Our tuition-based programs were held at Bryan and Sandburg, where we had 388 students in pre-K to 8th grade. Sandburg had a summer school program of 279 students in music. The York Academic Summer School program had 21 courses with 876 students. The athletic program had 1,604 registrations, and I differentiate that from students in registrations because we had some students take up to 3 programs, or a small number took up to 3 programs. At Fisher, for Title I and Title II, so that's low income and ELL students, we had 110 students. And Churchville, where we have Title I students, it's a Title I program for students who have particular needs. We had 119 students. And at Hawthorne, we housed the extended school year program, which is for children with special needs, so that we don't have regression through the summer. And we had 148 students in that program. So all told, we had 3,524 registrations or students in summer school, which is a decent sized school district. So a very, very busy staff offering some really great programs to our students. We're very excited about what it turned out for the kids. We have a number of recommendations that are included at the back of the report. We want to start the planning process with some of our outside providers earlier. It was something that started late in the school year last year. We want to start it much earlier so we can do a better job of marketing. That's primarily for the pre-K-8 program so that we can really capitalize on it. The program that was held at Sandburg, the Worlds of Wisdom and Wonder program, which is for students of the gifted students. We've already started the planning for that, and there's some really exciting opportunities for those kids that we'll be able to offer again at Sandburg. We've, like I said, already started planning for the dates. I hope to bring that to the subcommittee for review in December. Those dates were brought to the EC12 district leadership team actually today and were reviewed earlier by the CNI team earlier this week. So already getting rolling for next summer.
Thank you. Sounds like it'd be a great place to be next summer.
Yeah,
Any
on
questions?
days like today, it's nice to think about the summer, right?
Any questions for Dr. John? Mrs. Stufen?
Thank you very much for this. This package was good. I really like the recommendations. Thank you for the update for the recommendations that were given to us in our packet, because I had a few questions that you answered. I like the linkage that it looks as though we have had, and it looks like conversations we are going to continue to say, what is summer school all about for us? You know, back to our vision, right? You know, how do we attain that vision even in our summer school program? One example is enrichment. One example is recovery. And that's good. I mean, I wanted to commend you for doing that so that it's a clear linkage as to why we're doing summer school. We can start looking at, you know, measuring, you know, the value of that, right? You know, are we doing cohorts? Do we need to do cohorts as we introduce new course proposals or new courses to the curriculum? You know, we say, how are kids doing? And then do we need to do any summer school programs to get them ready? Like the AP courses, for example. So really no question. I mean, I just like the thought process, and I think that is the way that we are successful moving forward on behalf of our students and purposeful work. So thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Zebner?
Really quick, Part 3, the grant-funded school programs, is that 100% grant-funded?
Yes, it is. To the best of my recollection it is.
Okay, great.
The one part that's not is ESY.
ESY is not completely grant-funded. Not even close.
ESY is the last section. Yeah.
Do we have any idea whether those grant funds for that program will be available in the future? I mean, are we planning that the funds are going to be there?
Yeah, we're planning for those programs for next summer as well.
Good. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We will go on to the overview of the York High School course proposals. Mr. Purnell.
Yes, we're bringing this to the board this evening. Dr. Johns will outline the course proposals for next year. We're doing this in November just the timeline, so you're aware we do need to, once this is approved, move forward with putting them together, publicizing them, getting them to students. So that's why we're bringing it in November to the Board of Education, so that we have enough time to do all that we're not necessary to do to put that out to students. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Johns.
Thank you, Mr. Purnell. In accordance with the Board of Education Policy Instruction 640, curricular development changes or revisions to the curriculum shall be recommended by the superintendent and approved by the school board. So that's why we're bringing this to the board this evening. The following, you've got a list of the new courses and recommendations for modifications that are being made for York High School for the next school year. We have over 20 course modifications or proposals that you're reviewing. The process to date has been really swift. It began last spring as teachers and counselors provided advice to the leadership of York High School as to ways to increase student achievement and to make it plausible or feasible for more students to take more elective classes, for looking for different ways to work around the constraints of a master schedule, which I can tell you from experience is really, really, really complex. Particularly students that are very involved in programs such as music, it is or AP courses, it's very difficult to build their schedule. So the counselors looked at ways and brought it to the leadership of ways of tweaking our course program so that students might have more access to elective courses than they normally would. And so this is a group of professionals working really hard to try to improve our program and opportunity for all students. These, once taken to the leadership, the proposals were presented at the IAC committee, an instructional review council, where it was highly scrutinized during the month of September. And the leadership at York High School spent several weeks reviewing these proposals at the IAC. The proposals that were then submitted to the curriculum instruction team here at central office. We brought it to EC12, the district leadership group, and then to the subcommittee. So a lot of eyes have looked at this, a lot of thought process has gone into it. The criteria which was involved in the thought process is actually fairly standard. Our goals were to increase student achievement. We are always looking for multiple pathways to graduation, capitalize on student interest for motivation and providing opportunities for all students, providing options that are relevant to students both now and later in their lives, looking for ways we can be flexible with the schedule so students can pursue their interest, providing a comprehensive education that meets the needs and interests of all students, and finally, but certainly not least of important, because I sit next to Chris, looking for ways to match resources with the projects we have underway, as well as making sure we have the credentials and the personnel in order to pull off these student interests. The two biggest changes that are on board here I'd like to highlight. The first is the math program. As I highlighted in September, we have a very good sized group of students that are achieving very highly in math, and we felt we needed to make accommodations or changes in our curricular program to really capitalize on that. So the high school proposed adding a freshman geometry program. In the past, most students who have taken 8th grade algebra enrolled in either freshman geometry H or algebra X, so honors or the X class. The proposal recommends eliminating the algebra X class and replacing with a freshman level geometry course. This change allows students who have a basic mastery of the content of 8th grade algebra to move on to geometry as opposed to taking another algebra class during their freshman year. During the sophomore year, the students would take a new course that will be proposed next year, which is an intermediate algebra course of some degree. This will enable kids to take more complex algebra topics. They can extend algebra into new areas and use it in terms of problem solving and applications. And then the course sequence for the junior and senior year would take these kids to advanced algebra, trig honors, and pre-calculus honors. So it's another pathway to move a fairly large body of students to much more rigorous and advanced courses. I think this is a move in the right direction. The other major change I want to call your attention is the continuation of the science changes that were brought to light a couple of years ago and presented to the board a couple of years ago, which moves us to a 3-year science curriculum, which is fabulous. This way, all students have 3 years of science before they take the ACT. As you know, when the ACT organization reports which schools and which states have kids, have what percentage of students college ready. It's the science that tends to trip up school districts. Because if you don't meet in any one area, you're by ACT considered not college ready. And based on some flaws of the modeling that they use for science, it's typically science that trips up kids. So we want to make sure our students have as much science as possible. It's also in line with the view we have in the U.S. right now that we want to develop the science and math skills of our students as finely and further as far as we can. So this is really a great step in the right direction, and it's a continuation of a program that's been put in place. Largely for the remainder of the classes, not all, but largely for the remainder of the classes, it's taking year-long courses and separating them into semester-long courses. So the child might take a graphic arts class one semester and not be able to fit into his or her schedule the second semester, but can come back to that class another year. Currently, that wouldn't be feasible. Now we're finding ways to make that feasible. So we're making smaller increments of the scheduling that we're putting into place. That's my summary.
Any questions for Dr. Johns? Mr. Collins?
I don't have a question. I just want to applaud you for making our curriculum more rigorous and more flexible. Please keep it up.
Ms. Hirsch?
I'll second that. I think we're moving to increase the rigor at all levels throughout the organization, throughout all of our students' experiences. I think the math and science piece, the shift that we're going through right now is something that is definitely in our kids' best interest and in our best interest. One of the things that we had talked about at the committee level, and we're talking about it, publicly, that one of the most important pieces is communication to parents, communication to students, planning their academic careers. When we look at where kids are, where they are now, where they want to be, and how aggressive they want to be. If they want to be in the BC class, okay, what work am I going to need to do when I'm in 6th grade to be able to be prepared to get to that level? So I realized that we needed to approve these changes, and then we can start putting the communication plan in place. So thank you for, we talked about that at the committee level, but I think it's one of the most critical things that we can do is we can empower our parents and our students to be prepared for those changes coming forth. Will the history and evolution of rock and roll run in the summer again, and can I sign up?
Mr. Bloom, did you have a question?
Yes, and I want to echo you guys. I mean, this is great, increasing the rigor and the depth of the coursework. Being a finance guy, I do have to ask the question, what is the impact on headcount staffing do these changes have?
Largely, it's going to stay pretty stable because when you set up your staffing, you're looking at the number of kids in the building and adjusting things accordingly. And then you have some places where you have smaller class sizes. Largely, what we're going to see is that things will be stable. We might be able to have even more evenness throughout the curriculum because we've got more ways that we can make the master schedule work in our favor. What really hurts us when we build master schedules is certain courses that meet one period and that have large numbers of students who take it. That would cause you to have unevenness in other places in your curriculum. So wherever we can be more flexible, we might be able to get a few more kids in a class so we're not running small size sections. So the only concern I have is as we put in the science, we're going to have a bubble of kids where we have the kids who are going to take the class and then the new kids who are going to, the next grade level who are going to take that class as well. So the bubble. But we're very confident, and the work has been done to kind of factor this out, is that we have the right certifications in place to make sure that we can get through that bubble.
Sure. And then is there a minimum enrollment amount to make sure that, you're not having a class with 3 kids in it?
I don't think that is economically feasible, and there's so much pressure on making sure that we offer as many classes as possible. You typically don't see those things happen. We have some places.
You don't see.
What's that?
Yeah, I mean, is there a minimum, or you drop the class, or how do you approach?
That's something I personally don't know yet. What happens is the pressure to run as many courses as possible makes that virtually unfeasible. What you will see in classes in like ELL or in special ed, where you have a lower number of students in a particular class.
Sure, and those are those are mandated things. I'm just saying that I love variety, but we have to apply it. We don't have unlimited funds, so we can't afford to have 2 or 3 kids in a class across the spectrum. That's an extreme example, but I was just trying to figure out that if you don't get 15 kids to sign up for something, what's the lowest class size, out there today?
Usually the process, though, is Diana would look at her staffing numbers and create those classes, and she has to make some of the tough decisions about whether those classes can fly with the staffing numbers she's been given. And so it may vary, and sometimes the principal will say, you know what, I'm going to start a new course. I think this is a valuable course. I may start it with a lower number for the first year. That's a conscious decision that a high school principal may make, knowing that it may grow as the reputation goes out there. And so that's kind of decisions the building principal would make at the high school level. But I think just the economics in our staffing levels, you're not going to see classes that are real small. And I don't see them in visiting the high school. I don't see very small classes. I haven't been to all the classes yet. But
Sure, okay. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't lose anything.
Ms. Hirsch.
Kind of along the topic, some of the discussion that we had at the committee level was revolved around the rationale, if you will, of what kind of a mix is the right mix for us to have in terms of electives. If we look at the graduation requirements for electives, do we have the right mix of offerings? Do we have the right ratio of required courses meeting students' different academic levels versus the right mix of offerings to attract kids? I don't think we're there yet in terms of looking at the overall offerings at the high school. We kind of talked about some changes moving forward to the course recommendation, and I think the curriculum committee had some discussions about, when do we add the history of rock and roll? Is that the appropriate course to add? How do we make those decisions? Do we make those investments? And I think we had expressed a desire, I think, to better understand the mix and to make sure that the mixes were appropriate investments to be making. So I think we are hoping to continue those discussions as a committee moving forward. And Dr. Johns, if you wanted to talk a minute, the experiences that we've got with some of our new administrators in bringing the high school course recommendation process and the types of changes that we're looking to make and improvements.
Thanks for the segue, Maria. We have Chris Covino, the assistant principal, and I both come from backgrounds where much more time is spent in the course proposal process. Here it's 9 months, and I come from an 18-month background, and Chris comes from closer to 24. This enables us to have longer conversations, much more drawn out, and instead of taking 20 proposals to the CNI subcommittee, we would take them over a period of time instead of trying to do it in one night. So deep questions can get answered. We can spend much more time on the articulation so that the middle schools are able to help us market some of the neat programs that are taking place at the high school. We also are able then to really gauge and measure how well the critical parts of our curriculum is embedded in what the high school does. Additionally, we look to bring in some additional training for the textbook selection process, and we're going to begin that next month so that we can have some assurances, because eventually materials become questionable. I shouldn't say become questionable, become of question, and we want to be able to say we have a recognized process that's used throughout the country as our means of helping us select textbooks. Beyond that, it's essential that we have quality implementation plans put into place. So we have some statutory regulations we have in terms of presenting materials to families so that they can review and the community can review. We need to put that in place, and then quickly, and maybe earlier, spend time having very high quality implementation processes, and then ensure that the staff and professional development follows as well, so that it's smoother for everybody, not just the process of making the course proposals, but the process of actually implementing them as well. And that then buys us time to do some of the community awareness and parent awareness on a little bit better timeline than we were doing this year. Now, granted, we got a lot of new faces, so it really felt like a rush this year, but we're working already on ways of kind of stretching things out. We hope to start the conversations right away on that sophomore intermediate algebra class. We're still not going to get to the full-scale program that Chris and I were brought up in, but at least we'll be able to stretch it out a little bit so it's ready for next year with a little more room to spare than we did this year, time to spare.
Mrs. Stufen. Yeah, thank you, Charles. And not only textbook, just what's the materials to enhance this course, right? As you and Dave and I have talked about, there's other ways in technology to bring that forward. And I know that that's future thinking, but I always have to say it. It might not be a hard textbook at some point. I like the fact that you told us kind of what you envision for the future, because I like looking at utopia. I don't know, but we're talking about our vision. We're saying, we're going to empower all students to achieve beyond their dreams. So as we look at course proposals, what is it? It is, how do we achieve that vision based on academics, based on the entire educational experience, and looking at what are our high school graduation requirements? Are they on target for today? I don't know when they've been reviewed before, but you always have to revisit those and say, is this where we want to be? Does this identify where we want our kids to be going to college or vocational schools and be that college career life ready? And then based on that, that's our our vision, our district priorities. What are recommendations and why? Why are we choosing these particular courses? It looks as though. Well, and then based on that, then it's, what are the implications from graduation requirements to what are those core courses? What are the electives? What's the balance? And then what do we add? What do we remove? Because we can't keep adding and not removing anything. And then, how do we track? How well is it performing for us? And have that part of the conversation. And lastly, of course, the cost. in the resource allocation piece. So I like that. I mean, I like that path that we're on. With that in mind, these course proposals, it looks as though we have been given quite a few that are just changing from a year-long to a semester-long, which my kids would love if they were still here in this district, because there are a lot of classes they wanted to take, but they couldn't fulfill them. And I know that's reality for a lot of students. So that's the positive thing. That's part of the course proposals in here. The other isn't, and then some of them with science and math that you articulated. But aren't there new courses in here as well that we're requesting to add?
Yes, there's a number of courses that are new. For example, we have some classes that were added in particular that would be for ELL students that we're doing for compliance issues. Ideally, we'll be able to offer classes of interest and rigor for our ELL students as they migrate to the high school. I shouldn't say migrate, but move up through the high school.
Okay. And then I'm not going to I don't mean to pick on these courses, but I'm asking because I love the evolution of rock and roll too. I'd sign up, right? I'm a rock and roller. Grew up with rock and roll, thank goodness. But has that been around, or is this a brand new course to our district?
All these are new courses. That would be a new course.
Okay. So I guess I guess I don't know, what the curriculum and instruction committee talked about the rationale behind new courses. And the only reason why I'm asking is we just heard about the levy, we just heard about how tight things are, the last several board meetings. We know I represent District 205 in Lend, and every time I go to a meeting, every time I get an email, it's less and less money that we're going to get. They're asking us to be more involved with our legislators so that we can advocate for the things that we need for education, not only providing to the students, but the funds to do that. And they're taking away local money, for things that are of value to us, like the Regional Office of Education. So I guess what I'm trying to do is understand how can we justify adding more courses if we don't know what the cost analysis is, and and how many students, and it's expensive to have a teacher there teaching that course.
It really is a combination of factors, and I think the first thing is to reflect back on what Mr. Pernod said, in that the leadership at the high school has a set amount of staffing, and they want to spread it to meet all the needs and the interests of as many students as possible. So if the history of rock and roll, which I am sure is going to be a seat filler, does not in fact do so, and it has maybe a low enrollment of 3 or 4, then the leadership is not going to staff it. So it doesn't incur then the cost. And it's a slightly different way the economy is slightly different when we come to staff and classes. If there isn't a need there, it doesn't pass the threshold that gives us the balance and match all the needs that exist at the high school, you don't fill the class. This wouldn't be one of those courses, but if at the high school that they were trying to put together, I don't know, the evolution of rock and roll, the next year the evolution of Baroque, and the year after that the evolution of classical, and they were putting together a whole series or kind of a curricular spine together, like you might see in a new language. Yep. Then in those cases, as David mentioned, you might run a class very small. For example, if we're to introduce Farsi, we might only have a few students the first year, and you essentially underwrite some of that expense to help the program develop over time. So it's a tough call. It's a very complex issue. But in this case, the safeguard is if the student enrollment isn't there, we don't have to run the course, and we put that allocation elsewhere.
I know, but another class is, lifeguarding. I know we work with the park district, and I know that they train people. I'm not sure I understand the rationale behind how we make it.
The thing to remember is these children are going to be taking classes anyway. Yep. And so if it's lifeguarding, or if it is his regular PE, or if it's another elective class, that the district budget is going to pay for children taking classes. And so the cost is there either way. The children are not going to go home early. They have a period of time they need to be at school, and their families want them to be at school, and they're getting a good education. We'll be here for it. So they're going to fill up that time one way or another, and we can make it interesting and apply to their interests, or we can have a very narrow curriculum. In this case, we're fortunate that we have kids who have a breadth of interests, and we're able to support at this point.
Mr. Collins.
Two things. First, on that subject, I applaud your efforts to have a wide and diverse curriculum, because high school is really a time to find out what you're interested in and what you're good at. And it really shapes the rest of your life. So with that said, my second topic is, I was going to say I'm going to sound like a broken record, and then with all this talk of the history of rock and roll, I realize that is a historical metaphor now, isn't it? But we offer 2 levels of English, 3 levels of science, 5 levels of math at the high school. And I see a lot of solid lines that go horizontally from course to course. And all I want to say is, as you plan summer school courses and things like that, I would encourage you to plan a path that goes vertically as well, from year to year. For the ambitious kids that work hard, that want to move up a level in rigor from year to year, please allow them a pathway to do that.
Any other questions on the York course proposals? We'll move on. The next item, thank you. Again, that's very informative. Next item on our agenda is the approval of board meeting minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes as received and posted on board docs for October 25th, 2011 and November 1st, 2011? Seeing none, those minutes will stand approved as posted. Next item on our agenda is the superintendent's consent agenda, and tonight's consent agenda consists of the personnel report, financial reports, approval of the estimated amounts to be levied for 2011, approval of the new and modified York High School courses, approval of the recommendations for the 2012 summer school, approval of a resolution authorizing participation in the Illinois School District Liquid Acid Fund, plus, whatever that is, and the approval of resolution authorizing intervention in proceedings before the State of Illinois Property Tax Appeal Board, plus the acceptance of donations to 3 of our elementary schools, Jefferson, Emerson, and Field. Is anyone wish to remove an item from this agenda for discussion? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move that we accept the superintendent's consent agenda, including items A through J.
It's been moved by Ms. Hirsch, seconded by Mr. Collins, to approve the consent agenda. Mrs. Walsh, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Hirsch?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner?
Yes.
Mrs. Droney?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. McDonough is absent.
6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent. That motion carries. Next item on our agenda is a roster of upcoming meetings. We have on Tuesday, November 22nd, a special Board of Education meeting. Mr. Pernod, is that an entirely closed session meeting, or will there be an open session to that as well?
Actually, as a result of tonight's closed session meeting, we believe, and I'll talk with my administrative team, but we may very well cancel that meeting. So there might not be a need to have that meeting now. So I will definitely let the board know at the end of the week.
But in any event, as far as the public's concerned, it would have been a closed session.
It would have been a
only.
closed session,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you. We also have a series of 5 committee meetings scheduled on the calendar. We have a Finance and Operations on November 22nd, another Finance and Operations taking place at Lincoln Elementary School on November 28th. We have a Performance Management meeting on November 29th, and the following day, November 30th, a Board Improvement Policy Committee meeting, and finally on December 7th, a Curriculum and Instruction Committee meeting, followed by the 13th, which would be our one and only business meeting for December. Are there any board communications? We have a number of committees to hear from. Board Improvement Policy Committee. Is there a report? Ms. Stufen.
Very briefly, we had our community forum, which we organized with the PTA Council to be very interactive, and we've gotten good feedback. I know that Dave is working with his cabinet on conversations and issues, and we will be talking about it at our next board meeting. We're still working on the vision and mission, and that will be communicated to various different stakeholders, if you will, and at the next meeting we're going to be talking about how we leverage that and execute that, complementing the way that we conduct our business, the people that we're already talking to, and you know, how we'll do that, because I know that everybody's very busy trying to get everything done. And I know that the committee had talked about the National School Board Association Conference coming up in April in Boston, and it was the Board Improvement and Policy and Community Relations Committee's recommendation that due to the economics and the work that we're already busy doing here in this district, and Friday through Sunday we're going to be with a lot of different Board of Educations where we can better see what other school districts are doing, that we would opt not to spend the money to have someone from District 205 Board of Education attend the NSBA conference in Boston in April. So I wanted to bring that to the board for any discussion. Otherwise, we will move forward with that recommendation, but it's up to the board to decide.
Ms. Hirsch.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's every other year that the school board conference, but every couple years, the national conference actually comes to Chicago. And when the national conference comes to Chicago, we attend both the Illinois conference, which is traditionally the weekend before Thanksgiving, which is this weekend. And then we also, some of us attend the national conference when it is in Chicago. But traditionally, I think, for the most part, we don't travel to the national conference. So I think that's a great recommendation.
The Chicago one is some years away. I did look it up, but you're right. It's been a while since we've sent people away to the national convention. Not to say that it isn't a good idea, and if we could afford to do it, we would, because you do get a great perspective talking to school board members from across the United States. But I agree, it's kind of not in the money this year. Anybody else have a comment on that? Then can we hear from the Curriculum and Instruction Committee? Ms. Ebner?
Two of the main topics we already discussed in tonight's meeting, summer school and course proposals. But there was one other thing I just wanted to talk about briefly. The Curriculum Committee has been discussing benchmarks and performance indicators at an earlier grade, talking about how MAP test scores can correlate to being career and college ready. So it's going to be an ongoing conversation. I'm really glad we're having these conversations about how MAP scores in third grade can correlate to, being ready for career and college. So that's going to be an ongoing conversation, and we'll continue to look at more data about how earlier achievement levels can help us.
And finally, the Finance and Operations Committee, Mr. Collins.
We talked about several things at our last meeting. Let me first ask the question. Well, the first thing we talked about was our annual audit. Will that be on a future agenda to discuss? Okay, for December. So I will not steal your thunder for December. The second thing we talked about was our self-insurance reserve funds, which is a fund that has been growing for the past few years. And we have an ongoing discussion about what size those reserves should be, and if there is an excess, what to do with those. And then we talked about the Property Tax Appeal Board. There have been 3 commercial and industrial properties this year that have had property tax appeals go to the Property Tax Appeals Board in their respective townships. We talked about and drafted a resolution that will allow the district to intervene in large property tax appeals cases. And I say large, that the only property tax appeals cases that would be worth the financial and legal resources necessary to take any intervening action would be large commercial properties. It would not be a homeowner trying to appeal their property taxes. And all we've done is draft a resolution which we approved tonight that allows the district, at the discretion of the superintendent, to ask our law firm to take the necessary legal steps to intervene in those appeals. It is simply an option that we have created for ourselves that we have not had before. And like I said, it takes a big property tax appeal to make that worth any kind of while for the district to spend any kind of resources on that. The fourth thing we talked about was monthly financial reports. Mr. Welton provided us with a new format for financial reporting on a month-to-month basis, which I think gives us a little better insight into tracking the financial performance of the district. We've been able to track it as a board on a year-to-year basis. This allows our subcommittee to track it on a month-to-month basis in a much more useful way, and we are refining those reports as time progresses. The fifth thing we talked about was the property tax tentative levy, which you saw here tonight. And then the final two things, we talked about an opportunity presented to us to give us some athletic scoreboards, signage in return for advertising on those signs. We felt that advertising within our schools was, this was the entering wedge into that, and that is a bigger topic for our district. So we are asking the policy committee to take the first steps on that and consider that in a much broader policy format. And then the final thing, we were going to discuss credit card transaction fees, but we'll be doing that next month because it was an ambitious agenda and we ran out of time. Which is next week already, yes. Thank you for that reminder.
Thank you for all of those reports, Ms. Hirsch.
Well, I want to compliment and thank the Finance and Operations Committee. I'm not on the committee, and I think it's the gentlemen on the board who make up that committee, and it's very refreshing, and it is a testament to the work that we've been doing to break into committees and to divide and conquer, to take a piece of work, to take an area of focus, and to spend some concerted effort and time with obviously our administrative counterparts. And I'm thrilled to have approved on the consent agenda a resolution to look at property tax appeals that are of significant nature, and I didn't have to be involved in the lengthy discussion about that, setting the parameters. So I think that I'm very heartened by the fact that there is work that is getting done by the Board of Education, and we're trusting each other to do the work. We don't all have to show up at all the committee meetings. One thing that I will also compliment the group on, and actually Mr. Welton, I really liked one of the financial reports, and I think that was, I don't know the name of it, but it was basically looking at outliers in the budget in terms of line items and tracking those and coming up with, we should be paying attention to this particular area where we're either grossly over or under budget according to where we are in the year. I think that's a great way to approach it. We used to do that a long, long time ago when comparing budgets and preparing budgets year to year. And I appreciate the fact that you would like to look at the financial reports on a monthly basis at the committee level, but I would also like to hear your thoughts on getting those out to all the board members. The financial piece of it is so large that I think we all, at least I'll speak for myself, I feel a responsibility to keep my finger on it and where we are. Not be involved in all of the decisions, but at least monitor it. So was it your thought that those reports would be posted for the committee's review or for the full board's review? Had you talked about it?
I'm putting the October 31st monthly financial statements on our admin board docs for the November 22nd Finance Committee, probably tomorrow. So you'll be able to see those.
Ms. Ebner.
Really quick here. I represent the Board of Education on the Lizadro Museum Board, and I just had a quick update about the Lizadro Museum. They have a grand reopening for their lower level, and I went there on Sunday and looked at the new lower level, and it's really something to see the new exhibits that they have. And they also have a lot of educational programs, so I just think we should remember that we have this resource in Elmhurst, and it's really double the size now with the new lower level. That's it.
Thank you. Ms. Hirsch.
I just want to thank Mr. Welton again and Dr. Charles Johns for giving up an evening and spending it with the League of Women Voters of Elmhurst. They did an excellent job. The League of Women Voters is doing a study, a national study, and coming to consensus on the role of the federal government in education. It's part of the organization and what they do, and they asked, and actually I'm sure I had a little bit to do with it, these gentlemen to come out and to address the organization and talk about those two topics, core curriculum and how it's going to affect us moving forward, as well as the financing from the federal government. They did an excellent job representing the district, and were very knowledgeable and very well received, and thank you for giving up yet another night.
Indeed. Any other board communications? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Mr. Collins, seconded by Ms. Hirsch. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Thank you very much. Appreciate your staying with us.